Welcome to More Than Mindset, the only podcast that bridges the gap between spirituality and success. Go beyond the mind with clarity and confidence coach Kim Guillory and learn how to integrate your passion to serve with your skills and experience to create a business you love. Let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to the show. I have a special guest for you today. Her name is Peggy Fontenot. Peggy is a spiritual mentor and an integrative life coach from Louisiana, way down south, right here with me. Peggy happens to be one of my special clients. She was a personal client and she came through the coach training, and we have a lot of history together. We have quite a few years here. We have a lot in common on the spiritual path. We've had lots of intimate conversations and tears together. Right, Peggy?
Yes, lots.
So I'm going to give you the floor and just kind of let these people know, what do you do? Who is Peggy Fontenot?
Peggy Fontenot is a little old lady who lives in the woods and had a dream. And the dream was to be a little old lady in the woods where people would come to visit, to talk, to get nitty gritty into the who am I? Who are we as people? I was here for a couple of years and nothing was happening. I was getting bored. I was beginning to question, why did I come out here? There's nothing out here. Who can I help here? I went away to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and became like a grandmother figure to a group of women. In 1 year, I arrived there, and there were two new women in the group, and they were young, late 20s, early 30s. And they introduced themselves as two women who were very active in their communities. One made a lot of herbs. She did a lot of homeschooling. She was very active in singing sacred songs. The other one participated in water walks. She was all about women rights, indigenous rights. And I was just so in awe with all that they did. Then when we were closing, both of those same women stood up on that last morning and said that the thing that they wanted was to belong, to be seen, and to be heard. And for the first time in my life, I felt intense anger because that was my story. I vowed on that day to figure out for myself how to belong and how to matter and how to have value, and how to use my voice to be seen and to be heard. But I didn't have the tools. So one night I found myself in a very deep depression. And my brain was telling me the world would be better without me in it because I wasn't doing anything. I had all of these gifts, but I wasn't using them. I had been there in that place 30 years before, checked myself into a hospital, spent 17 days there. Came out on a lot of medications and didn't want to do that again. So I reached out to Kim. And from that point, my life has changed. Like she said, we've been together for a while. We've had some great intimate conversations. For me right now, as an integrative life coach and a spiritual mentor, what's important is teaching my students the integration. The mental, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual. And then that falls into career and our finances and our social abilities to be with others and continuing ed with that intellectual side of ourselves. For me, spirituality is my mainstay. It's who I am. I try to deny that I'm a spiritual healer, I'm a spiritual teacher, but it is. In truth, that's who I am.
Why do you think you denied that? Can we talk about that a little bit? Because that's really the part of the story that was so painful for you, right? When you were finding yourself bored and underwhelmed. I like to use that word, underwhelmed, with life itself, to the point to where you were thinking of exiting, like there's just nothing here for me. I think that there's quite a few people who find themselves in that position, myself included. Have one day been like, is this all there is? And I think we've had the conversation about why we think that happens. And it's that disconnection from ourself, right? So I wanted to come back to the part where you said about spirituality is your thing, and then how we can link this together for the listeners on what makes integrative coaching different from just coaching. And you touched a little bit on it. You're like, it's physical, how it shows up in our body, spiritual. I think it's the spiritual embodiment, right?
Correct. Definitely.
And then emotionally, how we process those emotions and how we react and the actions that we take from how we feel.
Right.
Can't do anything about it. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of that, how you brought this together. And maybe we can start with the position that you found yourself before you started coaching. And what do you think is the thing that made the most impact, the most different? What is the realization that changed your perception to be able to live differently and see differently that you can actually help the listeners with?
That's a big question. The place I found myself in before coaching, very depressed. I was totally living in scarcity of everything, scarcity of money being the biggest thing.
Tell us what that means.
For me, it was really kind of crazy.
If you don't paint it, I'm going to paint it. So you have the option right now to go with it because I'm going in for it.
I know. I might be a little hesitant in painting it the way it is, the way it was. It's really, I have some difficulty remembering it, because it's so different today.
A couple of the things that I remember is the kind of just come over for a donation or just give me $10. And at one point it was I'm just going to open my house a couple of days a week just for if anyone wants to come by, it's just free. They don't need to pay anything. So it was that kind of mindset. It was just almost this begging or convincing anyone to come so I can teach I have to do this. I need to do this. And so maybe I could just give it away for free and then I'll have someone to give it to, and not realizing that was scarcity, that was lack of confidence, right? And the thing that I remember specifically is the day that you wanted private yoga. I'm trying to remember, it was a few years ago, but it was you had told the story of at the end of the month, you weren't even eating and shopping at the end of the month because there was no more money. And then you were asking about private coaching and you didn't have the money for it, but you had just sent some money to another country to help someone else.
That's part of my thought about being a spiritual person. You have to give, if someone needs, you just give. And so I was being a very good spiritual person, and I was giving and I was giving and I was giving to the point where I was literally eating bread and drinking water. And in my mind.
Yeah, it's almost an I don't matter.
Correct. Because I felt like I didn't matter. For me at that point in time, everyone else was more important.
My needs don't matter. I don't matter. My purpose of serving matters more than anything else. And I think the part we don't see, because I played into this too, that's why I know the story so well. And when I realized it, I was hold on, I give the discount so that she can do it so her can send her money somewhere else. She's actually not the one sending the money. I am. I remember thinking that. I'm trying to break this story too. It's really about self-awareness. You have to notice what you're doing. When you said, I don't know if I want to tell the story, it's a little crazy, from my end.
It has been a battle for me, internal battle as to how to say no to other people and how to keep the money that I make.
And I don't even see it as saying no to other people. I see it as allowing them to invest in themselves is saying yes to other people.
Yeah. That's a new mindset for me. I'm telling my story from back then. I had none of this mindset.
Yeah. Allowing yourself to invest in yourself is what empowered you. Because when you had, I'll never forget when you wrote that first check for coaching. You remember the way I would do things back then? I said, write the check and send me a picture of it.
I remember that was the most empowering thing I have ever done. That one step changed my life. I just have to laugh at myself to see how far I've come, where I was, to think that sometimes I fall back into that. Someone calls.
Oh, it's so easy.
It's so easy.
We forget.
Yeah, I was talking to someone this morning and she referred this whole thing about it coming back as the pigeon. And yeah, the pigeon's always going to come home, like I'm a homing pigeon. Those thoughts of the little homing pigeon, it was crazy. Not having money, but having money.
Of understanding the way the brain works. The neural pathways are so deep, and we're habitually always going to go back to what was familiar, even though it wasn't working for us, because we had adapted to that. And this new way is scary, especially when, tell me, I can say it from my side of the story, but I'm sure I have on previous episodes, so I'll let you say it from your side, is tell me what is so hard about being spiritual and making money.
The thing that I find to be hard is what the people say. The spiritual teachers and healers here are called traiteurs. And it's just like the common understanding without even being told. You don't charge for that. In my native tradition, it's the same way. You don't charge for that. So like coming into that as a spiritual healer and as a spiritual teacher, the integration and the embodiment of the training is that if I'm not healthy in my own body, mind, and spirit, what resources do I personally have to give to others?
Let me paint the picture from what you're saying. You are physically hurting. I remember your neck and shoulders were like glued together, and you would turn from side to side. Your shoulders and your head would turn at the same time. You weren't eating the last few days, week, or 2 weeks of the month. You weren't eating anything healthy. You were buying stuff, packaged goods, because it was cheaper. And you weren't able to get the help for your physical body, or like even doing any kind of self growth or business trainings or anything to be able to help yourself, because everything was going to donations, because that's how you were taught you were supposed to serve. And the result of that is you literally dying mentally, emotionally, physically. I'm going to say that there's a lot of anger to God. Like, hey, dude, you put us down here to do your work. Like, you need to be sending your people and the money. We are humans, guys. Like, we kind of feel that way. Most of you. I'm going to call you out. And so who can you help? How can you serve?
In that condition, you can't. You talk about that check, and the empowerment in that was the first time I did anything of that sort for myself. And realizing that I mattered and that I had a passion and a purpose, and that this was going to help me to get there, to break free of the chains that binded me and those thoughts that I just couldn't let go of. Even today I had a conversation, and it was like, oh, well, we don't do that. It's like, yeah, I remember. But today I do that.
I call you an integrative spiritual coach. That's my name when I talk about you, because you integrate several forms of spirituality. So give us a little background on that. It's like where it started, where you went to, and how you ended up here, how you ended up integrating it all together. Because I think the path to spirituality is so beautiful that it branches out in so many ways and then just makes this beautiful tree.
So right. A beautiful tree. So I started out in Catholicism, in a family, generations of family steeped in the Catholic Church. I still today say that is my foundation. It's my roots, which still connects me to my own rootedness here as a person, a human being. I was very involved in the Catholic Church as a young adult when I was attending the university. At age 40, I did my genealogy and discovered the skeleton in the family closet. My great-great-grandmother was Native, and it piqued my curiosity. So I started looking into Native spirituality. Found a family who eventually adopted me. And basically today my come from is the Native American spirituality. During that time, I also was introduced to Buddhism, and I have a Buddhist teacher. And he kept saying, oh, you're Buddhist, new student. And I was like totally freaking out because, no, I'm not a new student. I don't know anything about Buddhism. I'm Native American. A friend of mine who introduced me said, oh, the next time we visit him, bring something from your Native tradition. I noticed the flags around the home where he was staying and was told that they were prayer flags. And in my Native tradition, we make prayer ties. So I made prayer ties and brought the prayer ties over to him, and he wanted to know what each tie was and what was in it and why. And so I explained all that to him. And he took those little prayer ties and took me by the hand and brought me to, I'm still not sure what they're called, a dormer curtain. And under this deity, there were little squares, exactly the same colors as my prayer ties. And he said, look, see this, 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 this. I'm like, yeah. He said, same thing. He put his hands in a prayer mantra type thing and said, you can be Buddhist, you can be Indian, okay? And I said, okay. And that's how I became a Buddhist student. And as I go along in these three pathways, I really see a common thread. He was right. You can be Indian, you can be Catholic, you can be Buddhist. It's not about all that doctrine. It's really about how you live your life and how you connect with spirit and how you connect with other human beings. And it's beautiful. Like, I don't know what I would do if I had to go back to just one path.
I love when we take the labels down, how it all flows together. When we take the separations, like you imagine the stream that would have these like boards running down and in between, and you would be separating it into lanes. And then you suddenly lift what's separating it, and they just all merge together.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's kind of like a braid of hair, a braid of sweetgrass. It's all braided together.
And I feel like that is something that you offer others, is how to do that, how to integrate their experiences and reconnect them with spirit, however spirit looks to them, whether it's on the land or it's in the sacred ritual ceremonies or in the fire, in the cedar. It's because we're going to get to a little bit of what you do here so that others, can kind of reach out to you and see if it's something maybe they would be interested in. But really, your story is one of the things that I'm most inspired by, the way that you have been able to weave all of this just into an integrative spirituality, and your passion for helping the disconnected reconnect, especially for young women. That's always like inspired me. I don't have that particular calling, but I see the importance of it. It's like we do this, go into the prisons and save people from the electric chair when we really should be doing it from the high chair. Like that's where it begins. And when we can get to these young women and help them connect, then they're bringing these little ones into the world with that. It's like we're kind of doing things backwards here. We wait till it all falls apart. Then we want to make all these laws and rules and go and pick in and try to save things, and turn it the opposite way rather than building the foundation from the beginning. And I think that's what a lot of us in this integration and spirituality and coaching, this particular community that we serve in or that we have built, that's what a lot of us are doing. It's like we are stopping that from happening in our generation and at our families. Like I remember when my son was born and I put my hand on him and I was like, the buck stops here. I'll take the lick. I'll carry the cross. I'll make the changes, but it's going no further than here. I was so tired of the hurt and the pain and the depression and the poverty. And I couldn't imagine watching my child in it. I feel like that's part of the work that you do when you're helping those younger women.
Most of my clients, the young people, are late 20s to 40, 35, 36, 37. That's like my target market. And those women are coming to me as a grandma and as an elder. They're coming for the wisdom. I had a client that I worked with for 12 weeks, and the first thing she said was, I just want someone to listen. Like, no one listens. And the thing about, like, with coaching is, like, we listen and then we guide them, not advising them. We're not saying, oh, well, you should think this or you should think that or you should do this or you should do that. So they really get a sense of being heard. It's like holding sacred space with them, allowing them to be who they are in the moment. This one client said to me several times that seems like all I do when I get with you is cry. And at the end of the 12 weeks, she said, thank you for just being with me and allowing me to cry. And there was like no shame in that. And
no judgment. So one thing that I know for you, when you were in that dark night of the soul, I call it the dark night of the mind, because I believe our soul is light and knows exactly how to get back to the light. But our mind, our thoughts, our brain, is the part that brings in the darkness and kind of does all of this crazy stuff and takes us into the fight, flight, freeze, and defense. And it builds up this wall and it doesn't let anyone in and it's here to protect us. And I think that's the part that creates the darkness that stops us from reconnecting, stops us from being vulnerable and open because we're so afraid to hurt again. But I remember for you, it was not being seen and heard. That's where the pain was coming from. You're like, I moved out here. I have this dream. I know the women want this. I've heard them. I've experienced it. It was me. It needs to stop here. It needs to stop now. This is my calling. This is why I'm here.
Exactly. And it is why I'm here. To be that person that will allow them to be who they are. For me, that belonging and that being seen and being heard was so important. It was what I longed for. And it's why when those two women stood up and said the same thing, like you with your son, it was like, no more. This has to change. We have to be able to be who we are and to be loved and accepted and have compassion for each other. I was hurting. And I did feel like I wasn't heard and I wasn't seen. People laugh about me and my family, and I love all my family, but even just looking at a photograph of me, I'm so tiny. It's like, no wonder they don't see you. You're so low to the ground, It's kind of like that. I didn't even know how to stand up and how to empower myself and how to use my voice. The practices that we do in the coaching training and the program forced me in a very loving, kind way to look at myself, but I did in the beginning. I had to force myself to look at myself. I was afraid of who I'd find in there. So the soul was there. My mind had to be awakened. So it was a dark night of the mind. And once that awakened and I started seeing and feeling, there was so much transformation.
So let's talk about your program and what it is that you offer. Because first of all, let me confirm a little bit of the story. When Peggy first came to me, and as most of my clients, they are doing this spiritual work, energetic work, I'll say like energy healers, Reiki masters, massage therapists, mind body teachers, leaders. It's basically my clientele are people who are helping other people heal. And I mean that by self-healing. They're not the actual healer. We're the person who holds the space for the healing to happen. So with that being said, whenever clients come to me, including Peggy, it's this, I'm having trouble charging for this spiritual gift. And why she's on the show here is because she has made her investment back plus, and so I'm celebrating this, with her and also helping those who are struggling because they are not connected to their passion. They're not connected to their gift. They're not even seeing or hearing themselves. And so how can you help them? What is it that you offer that would be an option or an avenue that can help them reconnect so that they can find their passion and purpose?
So right now I'm working with a group of women and one guy. I'm so excited to have a guy in my little group with sacred rituals. It's a course that I've created and combine that with coaching. It's a 12-week program.
And this is done online?
This is done online in a Zoom room. And it's a private thing. They get notes and resource pages after the classes. They also it's recorded, so they get a recording. I also offer retreats here, either day-long or weekend retreats. I am a Reiki master. I do Reiki healing. The coaching and the online stuff is a gift. It's a way for me to do this work and not be limited.
What's your thoughts about Spirit giving us gifts so that we can support ourselves, so that we can be personally responsible?
Wow, that's a mouthful. Yes, Spirit does give us gifts. When we give ourselves permission to utilize those gifts and to offer it to people and to have them pay for us, it's an amazing thing. I'm able to help more people. I'm able to.
And I for sure see it as their investment in themselves. It's not even like they pay us for it, or it's like to pay me or to pay us. You invested in you. You invested in your life. You didn't even know what your life was before you invested and said, I want to find out. I want to grow. I want to like be responsible for myself. I don't want to have to depend on other people or not be able to eat at the end of the month. Like I have a gift and I want to know how to utilize it in a way that it supports me. Because think about an athlete. That's their gift. That's their spiritual gift that they can run faster than us and jump higher than us. And like that's their gift. Shooting hoops, right? Playing football, throwing passes. I don't know all that stuff, but just saying, like, have you really thought about that? Like they are making money on their gift. Why is it taboo if it happens to be spiritual? What is more important to invest in than your spirituality? Like seriously, your soul is having an experience in this human body. Like how important is it to integrate your soul mentally, emotionally, physically, so that you can have an amazing human experience?
I could say it's extremely important because that's what happened for me. It's the best thing I ever did. It broke me from a lot of fears, and it created in me this little swirl that was a 360-degree change. I did say, like, to be able to get money for it, it's like you have to give and receive and receive and give. It's like sacred reciprocity is what we say in the world of spirit. And like even with Reiki, when Reiki came out, there has to be an exchange. Healing doesn't happen if the person getting healed doesn't put something into it.
But the way I see it is, let's just face it, we live in the material world on the earthly realm, and the conversation and language here is money. Money is the exchange, like it is the vehicle to get service and goods. So you decide what businesses are going to stay open in your community by who you invest in order to get their services and goods. And then when it's for yourself, you decide what to invest in order to get yourself reconnected, yourself online, yourself on board. It's like the tool that gives you the ability to receive what it is that you want and need. And when we're afraid to charge or receive, we're actually blocking them from the help.
I agree with that. And like I was saying, it was that exchange, which is why I was in the position I was in, because there was no exchange. So it's the exchange.
But why was there no exchange?
Because I wasn't asking for it, because I was living in an old belief system.
Because
I believed it. And then when I started changing my mindset, it was like I could see.
Like, is it not kind of hiding the gift from certain people? It's kind of like when it's like, come to the Eucharist. Everyone come to the Eucharist, except for you, not you. You stay in your seat, not you, but everyone come and receive, but not you. Just curious.
Yeah, I'm curious too. Like, yes, by not offering, it's hiding. For me, it was like a not conscious choice. It was living from that old belief and that old story.
And you're such an ideal student. Like you're such a rule follower and you want to make sure you don't do anything wrong and you get it right and you don't get in trouble. So you were doing it from a place of honor. You just didn't see that it was actually harming you.
Yeah. There are like rules, religion, and the family dynamics. This is the way we do things and you don't sway from that. Those were some of the issues I had to break through to get to where I am today. Even like with the sacred rituals course.
And really, you're just teaching them tools to use to come home, right?
Right. It's all about coming home to themselves. For me, like walking the labyrinth or pouring a sweat lodge or having a drum circle or a fire and putting cedar and sage into it, it's definitely how you come back to center. It's definitely how you connect with spirit. And when we can tap into that, all of a sudden we start feeling like we belong. And we start feeling as though we have value and we matter. And all of a sudden you realize, oh, wow, I'm really connected to myself. When I walk this land, it's like, yeah, take me home, country roads.
So before we end this, I want to just give you a moment to anyone who is finding themselves in the position that you were in, which is like, I have these gifts. I know my work in the world is to share them professionally, as the way that it's just, I have the passion in me to serve, and this is what I want to do. And this is how I want to show up. And I'm kind of stuck in that too. Like, what would you tell them about like just integrative training that you received?
My biggest takeaway from the training is the process. Coming into presence, your whole punchline, like moving through that and then creating that life that you want to live through the coach training and working the process and doing the work. It's all possible. It really is. It's like I'm in such awe and amazement and gratitude for the punchline approach. I say that this work saved me. That
would be my next question is, what would you tell someone who personally found themselves in your position, like that you can help them with?
Just trust the process, and love yourself enough to do it. Stick with it. This has been one of the most challenging experiences for me and the most courageous. Like, I love that time that we did this, 30 days of courageous daring. It was like so amazing because I had never dared myself to do anything outside of what was allowed inside the little box that I lived in. There's hope. There is
well,
hope.
We're so glad you came out the box to play.
Me too. I
All
love
of us
playing.
in the community. We have an amazing community. If you guys want to come and check us out, we're on Facebook. It's called More Than Mindset to follow this podcast. But you can find Peggy on Facebook also under Tranquility Point Sanctuary Coaching. Is that what your page is?
It's Tranquility Point Sanctuary Coaching and my personal page, Peggy Fontenot.
All right. So how would you like them to reach out to you?
They could reach out if they're on Facebook private message, or they could send an email at tranquilitypointsanctuary@gmail.com.
All right. Is there anything else you would like to leave as a takeaway before we hop off of here? I thank you so much for coming, by the way. I know some of this stuff was kind of tough. It's always a challenge being presented.
Always a challenge. Yes, it's the thing that I'm learning how to do, challenge myself and just go with the challenge. I say, if anyone out there is looking for coaching and coach training, call you, Kim. You're it. And when you can love your life and love your work, there's nothing better. And I want to just say thank you to you for the invite here. I had a lot of fun. I'm glad I did it. This is it. This is me growing and transforming. And this is what our listeners can experience as well.
And tell these guys how old you were when you started this training.
Oh, well, I'm 67 now, so I was 65.
It's never too late. The calling is the calling. You cannot put the fire out. You can't put the passion out. I was 19 years old. I knew I was going to be doing spiritual work. And then I was pregnant. And then I was like, uh-oh. And went into like married, 5 kids, 2 businesses. And I'll be darned, it never died. It causes so much anguish when you don't answer the call. Like, I couldn't put it out. I kept trying because I was like entitled, like, God needs to make it easy on me. If I have to do this work, then at least you could send the people and I don't have to figure this out on my own, and all this stuff. I was really fighting myself. And then I realized, guys, it's just a thought. Everything that you want is available for you. It's a matter of directing your mind to work in the direction that you want it to go. You have to train your brain to turn that processor on and to get it going. And I think that was the biggest thing for you, Peggy. I mean, you're a smart woman. You were a school teacher. Like, you had the history, you knew, but it was that fighting against your own belief.
Definitely.
So what do you say to those who are fighting against their own belief?
Let the fight go. Surrender.
And allow yourself to be guided.
Right.
We are so glad you did. I know I speak not just for myself, but all of the members of this community who love and adore you, that you are their spirit animal. Maybe
it's that jaguar that comes in my dream time.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me go ahead and give this a stop, guys. Y'all look Peggy up. Come over to the More Than Mindset group. You'll find her there, and you can just say, "Hey, where's Peggy at?" And she will answer you, and then you can link to her page and become her friend. All right. Till next week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of More Than Mindset. If you're feeling stuck on your journey to health, wealth, and relationships, head over to www.portal.kimguillory.com to learn more about the Portal. It's a membership community where we take this work deeper, apply the concepts, and coach around the tough stuff.